The Menscape Podcast with Carl.J. Ashley.
Good evening and welcome to the October Menscape Podcast. Our sponsor this month is Ancient Spiritual Tours of Ireland, and our guest is Rob O'Donnell. How are you doing, Rob?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Carl. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you. Without any further ado, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
I'm Rob O'Donnell. What do I do? At the moment, I'm labouring for construction workers, but in general, I suppose where I'm aiming for and working towards is writing a book and doing some public speaking, some guest speaking. So I've done some public talks already for a few GA clubs, a soccer club, and a community in Dungarvan. And yeah, I found that it's definitely a passion of mine, and it's definitely something I can express myself through. And from a lot of I really only speak my truth about my experiences that I've had,
Yeah.
and that's all. I just tell my story. I tell what I learned about my journey, and I'm not telling anything that I don't know myself. So it's very easy for me to do that because it's lived experience. And yeah, it's something I enjoy telling that story.
Where are you based?
I'm based in Pallasgreen. I've lived in Pallasgreen most of my life. I've travelled quite a bit. In 2013, I knew I knew my life was at rock bottom in some regards. It was going no place. And I was in college at the time, and I got a good opportunity to go to America playing hurling. And I took the opportunity for the simple reason was because I had no exams done. Hurling was over. I felt like I was backed into a corner. And I just took that opportunity to go. And suppose I didn't have the capabilities to stand my ground at the time and face what was in front of me. And it was the start of my journey of traveling for the next 3 or 4 years. When I look back at it, Carl, I might say that there was a good chance that I was actually running away from what was really going on within me.
Right.
But at the time, I actually didn't know what was going on inside me. I knew that I was troubled. I knew that I had a void. And I just took the opportunity to go, and it opened up many doors for me in regards to that space. Actually, gave me time to think and time to reflect, because the environment that I was in and surrounded by the people I knew, I was behaving in certain ways that was very familiar. And I found that when I travelled, I think I started to change as a person. I didn't behave in the same ways that I used to behave to a certain degree. I found it was a new opportunity with new people, like a second chance. And I think them 4 years traveling really taught me a lot about myself.
So we might come back to travel in a little while. For anyone that's watching us further afield, Pallasgreen is in County Limerick, right? Which is in Munster in the south of Ireland. Are you a Limerick man originally?
I'm a Limerick man, originally born in Pallasgreen. My mother is a Turnafulla woman, which is West Limerick. It's about an hour apart. And my parents met. They were working in the regional hospital in Limerick. Mum was in the kitchen, and Dad was a porter. He's still a porter there. And they met there, and they had 4 kids. I have another half sister, who I love, and um, yeah, they moved to Pallasgreen. They had some tough times out in Pallasgreen. Uh, Mum was a stay-at-home wife, and Dad was the main provider. And at the time, I suppose I'd never really understood what was really going on within the household, because at times there was a lot of conflict. There was there was disharmony, and I suppose what I recognize now as a child was that I was very sensitive, and the arguments would have frightened me quite a lot, and I internalized it quite a bit. I suppose there was threats of I'm going to leave, And I discovered later on in life that was a fear of abandonment. I was afraid that I was going to be abandoned. And that fear of abandonment really brought me to my knees, Carl, in many ways, because I just thought that I was going to be orphaned or abandoned, um, and left alone. And I suppose at the time, I suppose I would have been very lonely anyway. I didn't really know how to deal with what was going on. I didn't know who to talk to, and I didn't know who to trust. And I dealt with a lot of stuff myself by isolating and retreating an awful lot. And I would have been a deep worrier at the time, but I never knew all this. Like as a child, it's only when I look back and I can see who I was. And not only that, when I look back, I carried that with me my whole life. So when I actually came to a place of being more consciously aware of what was really going on within me, I started to realize what my inner child was trying to tell me. And the inner child was deeply grieved, deeply sad, and was bothered by what was going on. And the way I dealt with it was through alcohol and drugs and gambling and sex and everything. Until I came to a place where I started to process my emotions, and thankfully I met some great people down through the years who became mentors of mine, that guided me in the right direction. Like when I started my journey, I kind of call it that way in 2013, when I started to say, right, there's something wrong here. I need to figure out what it is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of doors opened up for me, and a lot of people came into my life. It's kind of like the same when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I found that the teacher appeared for me many times, when I really needed it. It wasn't like it appeared like all of a sudden, but it was when I was really needing that kind of extra bit of guidance. I can only get so far myself on my journey, and I found that this person came into my life at times that guided me to the next stage of my life. What I found with mentors, Carl, was interesting was they'll stay with you for so long, or you'll stay with them for so long until you learn what you have to learn. But then you have to go practice that, and it comes in cycles. So it could be, I'm not sure timelines, but it could be a year, maybe you're with a mentor, and then I always found there's always a period of growing where you're putting what you learned into practice, and when you kind of have fulfilled that, and when you've learned that particular set of skills that you've been taught, it's time for the next chapter. And I found that's when the next mentor came into my life.
Yeah. So growing up is tough. You're in Limerick, and before you've embarked on the drink and the drugs and the sex and all the rest of it to fill that hole, it's hurling that's doing it for you. You're bread and butter every day out on the field locally, and that's where your passion lies until you start to travel.
Yeah, unknowns to myself, I retreated to the hurling field, which I live right beside the hurling field. And when I look back now, I realize that's subconsciously or instinctively I went to the hurling field, and that's where I was able to process everything. It's where I was on my own. I was able to be creative, and that's how I really calmed down, because within the household it was distressful. Like it was quite a dysfunctional household at times. So it was quite stressful, and it was distressing for everyone. And I think what really grounded me was going to the hurling field, and I spent hours down in the hurling field on my own, and I was happiest. I was so happy going to the hurling field. And yeah, hurling was a huge part of my life. But I suppose, one thing about it, Carl, was I was obsessed about hurling because it was the only thing that I knew what to do. It was my only purpose, and I knew that the more I focused on hurling, the opportunities would come, and many opportunities did come through hurling. But what I found out in the last couple of years was my deep obsession and addiction, nearly, to hurling.
Yeah.
When I tried to leave it go, it had a huge hole in me. I could not leave it go because it was such a comfort to me my whole life. Hurling was my comfort, and I used that to comfort myself. But in the winters, I couldn't really hurl as much. So when I started to get old enough to drink, I started drinking in the winters. And when the hurling came back around again in the summers, obviously I used that. But to go back to the point of leaving go of something, I had such an attachment to hurling that I felt like when I was leaving a go, it was like I was holding on so tight to something because I didn't want to leave a go because I didn't feel safe. I didn't know who I'd be outside of hurling. And yeah, in the last 3 years especially, I felt like that grip was loosening on the hurling because my performance was going down. And the more it was going down, the further I chased it. And the further I chased it back, the worse I was getting. And it was causing so much frustration because I reached highs in hurling. I reached places in hurling where, and any hurler will tell you this, there's a euphoria when you reach a certain high and you can do creative things. Like any person that's performing, like when you reach them states of higher consciousness on a field, that you do stuff that's just instinctive, that you don't even know how you're doing it, but it's just instinctive. And you chase that. You're going to chase that feeling again of just pure elation. And I found when I was leaving go hurling, I couldn't get that anymore, and it was really frustrating for me. And it took a lot for me to come to the place of acceptance that time was done. Yeah, and I still, would you believe this? You would. I actually grieved it. I went through an awful grief process of hurling because I was letting go a huge part of me. But I
Yeah.
suppose, as you know yourself, on the evolution journey, when you're evolving as a person, you're going to let go of parts of you that no longer serve you in the right direction. And I suppose I let go a lot of stuff for me, like jealousy and bitterness and anger and resentment. And when you leave go of that stuff, you become a new person. And when I had to leave go of hurling, it was a sign for me that it was time for me to evolve and become a new person and open up different doors. I was so engrossed in hurling, like, because there's a lot of pride and parish pride and
Yeah.
responsibility, and it's deeply engrossed. And it is nearly a burden. I found sometimes I was a very good hurler, so I think what I done at times, Carl, is I played the saviour role in the hurling field. I tried to take on the responsibility of everything, and a lot of that on the hurling field was down to not trusting people. And yeah, I just found that I tried to do everything, and I took the blame if we lost, and I took the credit if we won. So it was a really emotional roller coaster for me at times, on the hurling field. And going back to I won't mention too much more about hurling, but I suppose my biggest wish that if I ever did play hurling again, or when I did play it, was that I could play at ease. I could play where I wasn't in conflict with myself, or I wasn't desperate to win. I was desperate to win because it brought me a lot of relief. I wished I just played the game for the game that it was, because I actually loved the game itself. It's such a creative game, but and not I wouldn't have put much emphasis on winning. That's one thing I didn't like. But the other side of that, then, Carl, is the reason I didn't like losing is because when I lost, it brought up an awful deep feelings of loss within me, and shame and guilt. And I suppose that's why I never liked losing, because I knew I had to go through them feelings. So as a young child, you never recognize these things, but when I look back now, I can see that's why.
Hmm. Yeah, really interesting. I see a lot of parallels in your story and my story, only for me it was football. What the Irish call soccer, what I call football. There was a life of almost every single day as a child feeling like I didn't fit into the world, and I was different from all the people and things around me. And I used to literally get a football and kick it against a wall, and I'd spend hours and hours and hours just playing footy. That was my outlet. But when you talk about roles, the biggest shock for me, I guess, was in 2017 when my life changed. I had to let go of this idea of being a father. Being a father had defined who I was for 20 odd years. And all of a sudden, I had my wife was now my ex-wife, and my kids are all sort of being coerced into taking sides and don't want to talk to me. And all of a sudden, I've been made redundant from being a father against my own will. And you're kind of looking at that, and it's like, all right, so who am I if I'm not all these things I thought I was? So this idea of personal identity is crucial to our evolution and becoming obviously who we're meant to become. It sounds to me, by the way, from what you've said, like you're a born winner. Yeah,
Am I a bar winner? Like, I would have been very
me
competitive,
too.
competitive, competitive to the point of, like, hatred and bitterness. Like, um, but I suppose I had a determination to win on the field at times, and
You
even when
carried
I
the
went,
team.
yeah, I carried the team. When I look back, I'm not sure it was that the best thing to do. I didn't. I probably carried too much on my shoulders. When you see that with certain hurlers on certain teams, they do that. Whereas if I look back, I probably would have just tried to do my part and not tried to do everything. I tried to do everything. But when you go back to say I'm a born winner, I suppose in some ways, Carl, we probably all are. But really, I had a determination to succeed when I was hit hardest during mental health challenges. I suppose that's when my determination really kicked in. When I was told that I had an incurable disease, that it could never be cured, and I'd be on a medication for the rest of my life. I think something just clicked within me that day, and I said, "No, this isn't for me. I'm going to get out of this." And look, bottom line, like I I used to give out an awful lot about my parents, um, and when I really look back at it, like the resilience of my mother is just phenomenal. Like my mother has a story. She spent a lot of her life in institutions. She was taken out of the family home because her father was abusive and an alcoholic, and the three daughters left very early. And she had to be very resilient, and she had times of, she never know where she was going to be put next, and there was never a sense of safety there, never a sense of security. But Jesus, she has some resilience in her. She's an ability to get up and go and make things happen when she really needs to. And
So
I
the apple didn't fall too far from the tree.
well, it doesn't, like,
You knew where you got it from.
yeah, I recognize that later on in life, and I'm very thankful for that now. Where I wouldn't have been years gone by, I would have criticized my mother an awful lot for not being the person I needed her to be, more loving, more nurturing. But like in reality, she was. What she'd done with her capabilities is phenomenal. Like, and you know what? I don't think she's finished. I think she has such a determination to go on and write her own story, because her story is phenomenal. Like it just really is the story. Her story would inspire people to overcome so much in their lives, like where she was given no chance. I was given no chance, Carl. In school, like I didn't fit in. You go back a while ago talking about fitting in. I never fitted in school. I didn't fit in many areas, and so the only place I really did fit in was on the hurling field. And I suppose when you sometimes maybe the only reason I did fit in or people needed me was because I was useful, and I found I was very useful on the hurling. So I tried harder and harder, and I became a good hurler, and I was very useful to people. And you said there a while ago when your purpose of being a dad was gone, like who are you? You're no longer, you're no longer useful as a dad. So what am I useful at? So for me, it was just building my life around certain things, and like finding my purpose of where I am of use. Because as I said earlier, when my hurling career was diminishing and I was getting worse and worse, I was no longer useful, and I suppose I felt a bit cast aside and rejected. You're no longer wanted, and that happens quite a lot in sport, where people put their whole lives into sport, and when it's over, they're forgotten about, which I think is something that probably needs to be definitely looked at in sport more. So, and it is there is a uh, did read the prop for England, Thompson, talking about how they can transition from rugby into their life, because it is a huge transition. Like leaving go of something you've done your whole life, that's all you knew. All I knew was hurling. I didn't know anything else. Like in reality, I didn't fit into school. Like so it really brought me. It really challenged me. Like it really challenged me to develop new skills. That's the biggest asset I had to do, was develop new skills, because I wouldn't have survived otherwise.
I don't think anything epitomizes the the um the archetype of a warrior more than hurling and being a hurler in the game of hurling. There's brutal violence, but there's also extreme skill and subtlety and, like you say, creativity. But you have to have an unparalleled sense of courage and bravery to face into what to expect. It's a great game to watch, but I don't think I'd have lasted 5 minutes if I'd have been playing.
Yeah, you would have, Carl. It's actually probably looks worse than it actually is. But like what you said there is interesting. It's a historic game, but it's a deeply rooted game, a generational deep game. Maybe people say they started with Cullen or further back. So I
A
find that
man and a ball and a stick goes back a long way.
yeah, and what comes with that then as well is ingrained beliefs. And I always felt like there's nearly a bondage to it. There's a bondage to your local club, your local team. And I found even breaking that bond was is difficult because it's like you're nearly you're in bondage to something. It's ingrained beliefs of I die for the parish, die for the team, and you nearly feel like you're letting them down at times, like if you're not playing well or not having a good game.
So, how did you feel about Limerick going from sort of moderate success, not winning an All Ireland for a long time, to then literally being the best team in the country, winning, is it five Munsters in a row, four All Irelands in a row? Unbelievable success in a short space of time. Had you already disconnected from the game at that point, or were you happy to see that?
Yeah, this is an interesting subject. So the that Limerick team that was dominant for 5, 6, 7 years, I would have actually played with quite a few of them up underage. I would have been of a similar age to some of them, and I would have played intermediate with them. And when I went off on my journey, obviously I didn't continue on that path. And when Limerick were in their first All Ireland in 2018,
Yeah.
I was quite ill at the time. I think I came out of the psychiatric hospital that March, and I had moved to my sister's in Waterford for some respite. And when I went to the semi final, I went to the quarter final, but there was a fierce enviness. Like I was fierce jealous, and I was envy of us because I was afraid that they're going to win, and I wouldn't be part of that. Because my whole life, I dreamed playing for Limerick. I dreamed of being on that stage, and I couldn't go to the final. And the reason I couldn't go to the final is because I didn't want to face the feelings I would have faced if they won, and they did win, Carol. And the jealousy and bitterness I felt in that moment was like it overwhelmed me. And in that moment, I started to realize, geez, like this is really not good. Like,
You
I
meant to
re
be really proud for them lads that they overcome what they had to get there, and even balancing that with your own sort of jealousy and bitterness that could have been you and it wasn't. I'd say that'd be a really strange place to be in and really difficult to actually cope with and process emotionally.
yeah, it was overwhelming. I felt like I felt ashamed of myself. I felt embarrassed. And it was mainly jealousy, and it was, as I said, it was overwhelming. And I really said to myself that day, like, I need to get over this, like, you know. And I think from that point on, I started to recognize where the jealousy was lying, where the envy was lying. And thankfully, I'm very thankful for this, right? I've overcome the 90% of it, and I'm actually genuinely very grateful for. I'm delighted for the lads. I know some of the lads personally, and I'm absolutely delighted for them. Like when you look at Limerick, like I'm fascinated by how they done it. For the simple reason is Shane Lowry. I heard a story. Shane Lowry rang JP McManus recently because Shane Lowry is investing in Offaly GA, and JP McManus said he asked him where would he invest his money, and JP said invest it in the underage. Don't put anything into the senior team. And if you look at Limerick at the time, like Limerick started putting money into their development squads at 14, 15, 16, even younger. They invested in, so that meant that Limerick actually had patience to wait for the next 7 years before the fruit of that came. So they brought in great coaches at under 14. I know Jerry Wallace was there, Eamon Cregan was there, um, Anthony Daly was there at some stage. And what I love about that whole story about Limerick was the fact that they had the patience to wait them 7 years before it all paid off. So that's what fascinates me because I see it in life in general, and I see it in GA teams all over the country, bringing in certain fellas to coach the senior team, looking for instant success. Where I'm now a believer in long term goals and planning long term, where you build the roots, you build the foundation, and then build it off the ground. Um, yeah, but I suppose another point, Carol, that I'm strong about, and I suppose people mightn't actually believe this, or it might contradict them. But if I was to be asked, would I change my life for 6 All-Ireland medals? I wouldn't. I genuinely wouldn't, because at the time, like, I know why I wasn't playing for Limerick at the time. I was too emotionally unstable. They couldn't trust me. I had an awful issue with getting sent off and referees. I didn't trust the managers. I thought I knew everything, so I really didn't fit into that environment. Nobody could help me at the time, Carol, because I knew best. And I just did my own thing. And when I was on a TV program for hurling a couple of years ago called The Underdogs, it had a massive impact on my life.
Mm.
And the manager of the team said to me, he said, Robert, like, we're a couple of months in here, but you're not really fitting into the team. Like, you're not buying into it. You keep doing your own thing. And during the interview, they asked me, like, would I be willing to do anything to make this work? And I said I would. So 3 months in, they suggested I go to see a psychologist. So I done a Zoom call with Barry Keane in London. He's a psychologist, and Barry just basically said to me, from what I told him, he said, Robert, you need to trust him. And then I realised from that point on, that's what's been holding me back hugely, was I never allowed anyone into my heart in my life because I didn't trust anyone, Carl. I kept everyone at bay. I was afraid of being hurt. I was afraid of being betrayed. So I always felt safer on my own. But that came with a lot of loneliness too. I isolated an awful lot. So that was a huge turning point in my life when I identified that trust was the thing that was holding me back. And I think from that point on, I bought into the team and I took the guard down. And I actually genuinely had one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. I got player of the tournament. I was acknowledged for the work I put in, and it wasn't just through hurling. There was 30 lads on the team, and I found that I became somewhat of a mentor to some of them, and it was just an outstanding experience for me.
I think your raw kind of honesty and vulnerability would stand you in good stead for being a mentor to people, if that is any part of your future destiny, Rob, for sure. It'll stand to you. Yeah.
Yeah, look, Carl, when you've identified stuff in yourself and you've overcome it, it's very easy to identify it in other people. And yeah, look, because I've overcome certain stuff in my life, it's very easy for you to guide other people along that journey and along that path. And it's quite a possibility I might do that. I do believe a book will reach a lot of people's hearts, and through a book will give them some guidance. But I'd never refuse anyone that was looking for help if I could help them at all. Yeah, but
So we'll
what?
come back, we'll come back, we'll reel back to books in a little while. I've got another couple of questions for you here. Before we move on, I was just going to say, our nearest village here is Galbally, which is the home of what's the name of the Limerick manager that's enjoyed all the success?
John Kiley.
Thank you. And we're only about 10 minutes down the road from Elton, where JP McManus lives.
Mm.
And a lot of people have told me of the good work his sort of philanthropic and financial backing has provided, not just for Limerick hurling. One of my neighbours in 6 Mile Bridge said to me a long time ago, she was working for the Daughters of Charity, and if they needed anything, all they'd have to do is write, and the money would be there to help the people that were handicapped and mentally and physically disabled. So it's amazing what the right backing can do in the community and on the larger stage, you know. Um,
Yeah, Carol,
okay.
there's a lot of ignorant views out there towards JP McManus and the Limerick success. Like, a lot of people would have passed a lot of remarks saying, "Oh, JP's money bought you All Ireland," but that's not true. Like, and it's something that I suppose needs to be rectified really is a lot of county teams have massive amounts of money, but they just put it into the wrong places. As I said earlier, like JP McManus, if it was his money or it was county board's money, they put it into the underage and they built that team from scratch. And I suppose a big asset to them at the time was a sports psychologist called Caroline Curd, and maybe some finances would have brought her there. But she showed that she wouldn't have stayed unless she knew there was something special in that team, and there was something special in that team. But she also worked with Tyrone. She won All Ireland. She won All Ireland with Dublin. She won All Ireland with Tip. Like Tip had huge backing from Tenio. Dublin had huge backing. There is money in county boards, but out of probably bitterness and jealousy, people were trying to say JP bought All Ireland's, which is not true. He put his money in the right place. He was smart about where he put the money. And Shane Lowry is doing something similar in Offaly, and you can see Offaly now are building. Offaly are going to win in All Ireland in 4 or 5 years because they're building success from underage. So
You could say a similar story has happened with my childhood team and first love, Manchester City Football Club. Got a few bob back in, I think, 2009, 10, 11, around then. Firstly from Thailand and then from Abu Dhabi. And unprecedented success in the last decade, winning titles, leagues, trebles, cups, European glory. Oh, they just bought their success with the money. No, absolutely not. There's loads of teams have money and they don't all do the right thing with it. So, like you say, there has to be that kind of recipe or the ingredients for the everything to come together in the right way and at the right time. And sure, we had Jesus and God on our team, so we couldn't go wrong, you know?
yeah, very true. Yeah,
He wants to say hi. So I'm just going to run into a few questions here, Rob. Have you ever jumped out of a plane?
yeah,
Have you ever ridden a horse?
I have.
Have you ever walked on hot coals?
No,
Have you ever been abducted by aliens?
no, not yet.
Have you ever driven a Ferrari?
Not yet.
Have you ever cheated death?
Ooh, you have to describe that one, Carl.
We'll come around to that, I'd say. What is your favorite smell?
Uh, Fresh cut grass.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So the other question, have you ever written a book? I think you said you're in the process of doing that. You've an important story to share.
Yeah.
Tell me, are there any books that you've come across that have helped you? And are there any books that you'd recommend to our audience that have helped you change your life? And what were they and why?
Yeah, I've read many books, and I suppose the one that I will always go back to, and it's touchy subject with a lot of people, but I don't mind, is the Gospels, like the teachings of Jesus changed my life. Um, Absolutely changed my life. So the Gospel of Matthew is fantastic. The Gospel of John, I find fantastic. They're very easy books to read, but it can be difficult to understand what Jesus is really saying in the messages. So I read them quite a lot, and I meditated on them, and I got great wisdom from. What other books? I found MArshall Rosenberg's book, Nonviolent Communication, good. The Road Less Traveled was one of the first books I read. Um, yeah,
So the road less traveled, non-violent communication, and the Gospels of the New Testament, we'll
yeah.
see. And why would that be a sticky subject, talking about the teachings of Master Jesus? Is that just through depends on who you're speaking to, or
Um, well, at the moment in the world, there's a lot of resistance to God, Carol, because um, with all that went on in the Catholic Church, I think people have really kind of just don't want to even talk about God or blame God for what went on, or it's just a touchy. Religion is a touchy subject with people, and I personally have great faith in God, have great faith in Jesus, but I'm not religious one bit. I rarely go to mass. No, not to say that that's a bad thing or a good thing. Sometimes I go and I do enjoy it. But I wouldn't consider myself religious. I just have great faith in God, and I follow Jesus. He's my savior. And yeah, that's what changed my life.
Cool.
And I love my relationship with God. Like it's a deep personal relationship. My grandmother has great faith as well, and she's probably the most consistent prayer life that I've ever came across, and some of the older generation do. But she's a lovely, gentle faith. Like she prays for people. I think it's a lovely thing to do to pray for other people. But in regards to going to church and be seen, and giving money in the basket every week and all them kind of things, it's not for me. And yeah, so
Yeah, that'd resonate with me too. I think there's a whole set of virtue signaling behaviors and piety or piousness that comes with this overt show of worship. As a child, even before I really sort of studied philosophy of religion and theology and did my own research, as a child, it didn't make any sense for me to have to go to somebody else to talk to God. Religion sort of offers the idea that you might have a priest or a monk or someone in between you and God that you go to. To me, that never made any sense. I figured my relationship with God was my business, and there needn't be any third party in between. Um, Unfortunately, like you say, a lot of people throw the baby out with the bathwater because they've had a bad experience with organized religion or somebody in a religion that's been abusive in some way. Then they reject spirituality, you know?
yeah, like I suppose what really started to hit me was when I started to understand what Jesus was saying at times, Carl. And I'll give you a couple of examples, and I won't go too far into it. But one was call no man your father except your father in heaven, and we call all the priests father, father this and father that. He said, call no man your father except your father in heaven. So I don't call any priest father. I call them by their first name. He said, you go to your father and go to your room and pray to your father in secret. Like you can just go to your room and pray. And he also said, don't be like the hypocrites who go to the synagogues and stand at the street corners to be seen. Yeah, so like you don't have to do all them things to be seen that you're a good person or you're a righteous person. God knows your heart. He knows your thought. And he'll be the judge at the end of the day. So I knew that. So that's why I just focused on my personal relationship with God, which was just by me probably meditating and praying and reading some of the Gospels. And that's how I done it. But some people can do it by just sitting in stillness and other ways. I'm not sure what the way I done it is maybe different. I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is something of huge interest to me. I could talk to you all night long about this. The the Cathar people, the people of the Cathar race, will say they were the victims of, I think, what was called the Albigensian Crusades of a pope around the 14th, 15th century. And they lived in southeastern France and northeastern Spain. And they lived in a community. Some were vegetarians, some weren't. And they were very spiritual. They did a lot of meditation. And this went against the Roman Empire and what was then manifesting as the Church of Rome, the Vatican, and they basically engineered these devices. You know, when you see like an Iron Maiden, torture racks and literally physical objects of to cause human pain and suffering developed by these, and a lot of them were burned and tortured because they wouldn't renounce their faith, which was aligned with the original Christian teachings of the Coptic Church in and around Ethiopia and Egypt, not the sort of more bastardized modern version of Christianity that we get through the sort of King James Bible and what's been diluted and watered down and edited out. specifically things like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Enoch, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Where's all that? Where did that go? Who took it out and why? You know? Anyway, you can go there if you want.
Yeah, but sure, I know that's the truth, Carl. They doctored the Bible. Um, Rupert Murdoch, he has the rights to the Sun newspaper, now has rights to the Bible. They doctored the Bible. They took things out that they didn't want people to hear Jesus' true messages. Why didn't they want people to hear Jesus' true messages? I suppose because Jesus said the truth will set you free, and they don't want people to be free because you can see with the COVID and this digital ID, they want to control everyone, you know, and that's the whole main agenda of that other side of the spiritual world. I suppose they want to control, and
Yeah,
Jesus wants us to set us free. So it's in their right mind to get rid of stuff, you know.
I've got a cat and a dog yowling here today now. Hey, noisy buggers, aren't you? My furry friends, my companions. So, have you ever done any public speaking? You mentioned before that this was something that you'd sort of been involved in before, and maybe something more for the future as well. What kind of things are you talking about, and where would you do that?
Yeah, actually, the first time I done it, this a girl in Pallasgreen actually, Caroline Stokes said to me, "Geez, Robert, you should tell people your story, or you could." And I kind of brushed it off, Carol, because I'm kind of the person. Look, if it comes to me, it comes to me. I don't go chasing it. And I met Caroline randomly in Super Value in Castletroy one day, and she said it to me again, and I just said, "Look, Caroline, if you set up the event, I'll do it." And to be fair to her, she set up a beautiful event, and she brought another speaker as well. And I spoke that night, and I found that that was the first time I found that when I do public speak, I find that I'm free. I'm able to express myself, and I just loved it. And I think the ball started rolling from there when I spoke down in the GA club in County Cork. I spoke for a soccer club in Tallow and Waterford, and then I spoke for uh, in Lismore for a community who have issues with suicide and that they just wanted answers. And yeah, they actually quite that group in Lismore were quite perplexed really because a lot of personal people they affected by suicide, and they just wanted answers. They want to know what's been done, and it was nearly a political campaign for some people. Sinn Féin were running it, and they were basically saying that they were saying we're going to sort it out, and it got quite heated to be honest,
Right?
because they said they're going to sort it, and I said to them, you won't sort it. I don't think they will either. Maybe they will, but I don't think they will. It's getting worse and worse, and it's something that really needs to be addressed because it shows to me that life isn't valued if they're allowing this to happen so freely, you know.
My um my fifth book launch that I've been doing recently last Friday was in Charleville, Rob. And I did it in conjunction with an organization called Shlee Ella, which I've probably pronounced very badly. I'm just going to show you their website. Amazing work they do. They're based just outside of Charleville in a place called Churchtown. And we did the book launch. We sold a few books and we raised a few bob for them. Amazing team of volunteers that help repatriate and reintegrate people into the community that have had a mental health diagnosis like schizophrenia or bipolar, or they've been on a psych ward and that person then they've got no place to go. They're not fully ready to immerse themselves back into ordinary day-to-day life. They need some time and they need some healing and they need some space. So they've got this beautiful environment where they're helping people learn about gardening, they're helping people learn, about baking, and they're reintegrating them into the community slowly. So Jess and Teresa at Shlee Ella agreed to be a part of the book launch last Friday and came along to talk. But one of the most staggering things is that they're the only one in the country. Why isn't there one of these in Limerick, Tipperary, and Clare and Kerry? And I'm finding it absolutely staggering that this very vital fundamental role in helping people with mental health, it's almost like a one-off as opposed to the norm. Where is the money to invest in these services, and why isn't there a lot more being done to help people, you know?
The answer is pretty simple, Carol. Like you said there, them people are volunteers, and most of this, the good stuff I see happening around Ireland is actually volunteer, and it's been created by people in local communities. But the truth be told, like the government don't want. I personally think they don't want to solve this for the simple reason is they're making too much money off drugs. They're making too much money off pharmaceutical drugs. Um,
Correct.
it wouldn't be in their best interest to heal people, to see people doing well. And it's simply down to that. Like, there's huge money in pharmaceutical industry, and there's money being thrown everywhere and anywhere to promote this and support this. And it's just a real. It would piss you off because there's people's lives at stake here. Like, there's genuine Irish people or people all over the world's lives at stake that need genuine help, and the right resources aren't there because they're not creating it, nor do they want to create it. Like, how long is it going to wait for them to do it? Like, there's some, Carl, as you know yourself, there's some incredible people in the country, like people with vision, people with a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight, but they're in the wrong places. We're dependent on a government to govern us, and they're doing a very bad job of governance. And for generations, they've done a very bad job of governing us. But anyone with an open mind that can think outside the box is creating stuff like this. And realistically, that's where we need to go. Like, that's where we need to go down the line. And it goes back to the concept, Carlos, people taking this into their own hands, because waiting on the government or putting your hope into the government is not going to work. They won't fulfill what our wishes of what we need of solidarity with the people, and to make sure people are well looked after and people's needs are met. And they're not going to solve that. They don't want to solve it. And I think it's down to the people to actually take this back into their own hands to solve it.
Absolutely. And I'd go even one step further and I'd say if you look at the role of governments, from the outside looking in, they're saying that they're there to represent the people and you might have constituents and political parties, but it's pretty obvious through the actions and behavior of these governments that they're not there to serve the people at all. They're there to serve their masters, which is an international global cartel of criminals who benefit from, like you say, the sale of pharmaceuticals, but not just that, the sale of guns and tanks and bombs. So it's almost like that there's an international cartel of criminals dedicated to being against humanity and almost trying to create a society for us in which to live where mental health issues is the norm. So everything that would be wholesome and good about your life, which is the family system, which is your local identity, your community, your neighborhood, your regional identity, your national identity, who you are, all of that's been under attack and it's been destabilized and it's been subverted. And you've got a situation where if you look at what's happening, there's lots of different countries where the governments are being overthrown because they're not serving the people and people have had enough. And in fact, who like I don't need to be governed. Do you need to be governed? You're a grown man. I'm a grown man. We can grow food and it's like this whole idea that you need to be governed is fucking nuts. I'm not an anarchist, in the sense of just, let everything fall apart, but I'm certainly an anarchist in the sense of, fuck government. I don't need to be governed.
Yeah, it goes like Carl. the truth be told, like they make they make money off people being sick, like so it's in their best interest for people to be sick because the more people that are sick, the more pharmaceutical drugs that are used, chemotherapy, radiation, mental health drugs, all them. So it's in their best interest to make for people to be sick.
And that's
And
the ones that are still alive that didn't get injected during the lockdown with the so-called, I don't think we can say the V word on YouTube, gets you blocked. But there's lots of people dying, Rob, off the back of these experimental injections that were introduced as a solution for people. And unfortunately, a lot of people were gullible and believed what the media and the governments were telling them. But now, 5 years later on, I don't think there's any, I think it's pretty clear and obvious what has been happening and what is still happening, you know?
yeah, it's look, it's a bit like
It's
it's a bit
fucking
like
genocide, mate. That's what it is. It's
well,
genocide.
it is. It's a genocide, Carl, and it's a bit. It goes back to, and I took cocaine myself. I took a lot of it, but it goes back to the fact of why they flood the country with cocaine is the simple reason is to dumb the people down. And when you dumb people down, they're easier to control. So it's very clear and obvious to why the COVID vaccine and cocaine and alcohol and all these things are being flooded in the country is because it dumbs people down and they're easier to control. They believe lies, like and what did they do during COVID to give out free money, like. It's a very easy thing to do to control
And
people when
did
you're
you
living.
notice how the weather was so good?
Was it, yeah?
That was just an accident, of course. That was just a coincidence that the planes weren't spraying stuff that was blocking the sun. The fact that there was a lockdown and we all had great weather was just a coincidence, right?
Yeah, true. So,
So I want to keep things on a positive note, right? And I want to keep things sort of in a vein of optimism and sort of a future which we can look forward to. There's more people waking up. There's more people sharing and speaking their truth. Um, we said we'd come back to books and writing a book. Tell us a bit more about what you're gonna write about and what you're gonna do.
yeah, like my book is really just explaining or describing the stories and the experiences I've had and how I overcame them. Like I've when you go within yourself, Karen, you search within your own soul or your own heart. You learn a lot. You learn a lot about yourself. And I just want to share them experiences and that wisdom is all I really want to do. And the main reason I want to do that is because I hope we can help people um, to recover and build a life for themselves, a bit of guidance for people. That's the only reason I want to do it. And that's why I want to public speak because I want to share my insights with people to help them to have a better life because I'm very lucky that I have learned these experiences and I've had people that have shared their experiences with me that have helped me. So that's all I want to do. Look, I've always had a deep desire to serve people or to help people. Like everyone, most people do, they want to help in some ways, but I suppose I didn't really know how to help. Like, and I wasn't really helping anyone in many regards. I was trying to help, but in regards, I was actually, when I look back on it, I wasn't helping anyone. Like, I was actually getting in the way or I was causing trouble helping people wasn't at my best interest. There was always a deeper kind of motivation behind it. It was to be liked or to be fit in or to get attention.
Right.
But right now it's a genuine willingness to help, like or willingness to contribute to the world. There's no self interest involved in this. I'm doing this because I believe it can help people. And look, it's great for me because it gives me a purpose and it makes me feel better about myself. And that's all I wanted. I wanted a purpose in my life that I'm good at. But ultimately, like that feeling of being able to contribute to people's lives is fantastic. Like the feeling you get when you connect with someone and you can have compassion or love for them, and that you can help them, or that they can feel safe in your company, or they can feel hope. Like my story can give people hope. And as I explained in a documentary once, one of the worst diseases I ever suffered with was hopelessness because I see no way out. I see no light at the end of the tunnel. I was in a complete state of darkness, And thankfully that has changed. I see a lot of light. I see optimism. I see a great future for myself. But I understand what it's like to not have that, and
Right.
I can recognize that in people now, and like for me to be able to offer that kind of wisdom or hope and support to people is hugely gratifying for me.
Yeah, there's a huge lot of wisdom in what you've said and some truth in the idea that you help make the world a better place, or your gift to the world is actually what you do for yourself and the work that you do on yourself. So rather than trying to change the world from a space of, oh, everything's wrong, if you look at yourself and become committed to being the best version of yourself that you can be, what you then go on to do is your gift to the world. So it's like charity has to begin at home. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Carl. Like all I was pouring out onto the world really was grief, pain, shame. No, they're all the emotions I was carrying, and I was passing them around to everyone. I was trying to get someone to take them from me, and I was causing a lot of trouble. Like, I was more of a nuisance to the world than anything. And I suppose I, I did believe for a long time that I didn't matter, and I'd be better off if I wasn't here. And it'd be easier if I was gone. There'd be less hassle. But like, I suppose when you find your purpose and you believe that there is a purpose for you here and you do matter, it's actually a great place. It's hugely a huge relief, like, because everybody matters and everybody has a purpose here. And if you could only get people to believe that, like, we're all here for a reason, like, we're here and we all are useful. We can all contribute to the world. And yeah, that's the most important thing, is to get people to believe that they matter. I thought I didn't matter, like I really did. I thought I was unlovable. I didn't deserve love. And when you change in beliefs in yourself that you do deserve love, of course you deserve love. Everyone deserves it, and that you do matter. Like, if you were gone, you'll be missed. Like many people who are gone, they're missed. Like, and yeah, I think them things. My mother put her hand around me one day and she said, "Robert, you'll get your break." Like, and she told me she loved me, and them things matter. Like, them things made a huge difference in my life. She didn't say a whole pile, but she just started rubbing my head, and I was in a lot of pain at the time, and she made a huge difference to me. Like, my mother was fantastic.
So to summarize, what would you say has been your biggest challenge that you've had to overcome?
The biggest challenge I had to overcome, um, like when I was told, when everyone was telling me to take medication, like, that you have to take your medication. I went to pee at a house and the man said, "You have to take your medication." The psychiatrist is saying you have to take your medication. Even my family were saying you have to take your medication because they were terrified that what would happen if I didn't, or if I remained the same way. But I was on an injection every 2 weeks. It was an antipsychotic injection, and after the third injection, I got extremely suicidal. Like, I literally wanted. It was so painful. I don't know what happened, but it was painful. And I suppose at that point on, I just said to I backed myself. I said, I'm going to do this. And I suppose the biggest challenge I faced, Carl, was being told it was an incurable disease and proven that it's not. Like, we've been told cancer is incurable, and there is people that have cured cancer, but you never hear about that. Yeah, so that was my biggest challenge, to overcome myself, the conflict within myself, and forgive myself. I suppose if you want to talk about the biggest challenge to overcome, is forgiving myself for all the stuff I've done in my life, because I give myself an awful hard time over stuff I done, telling myself I was a bad person, and like, I punished myself an awful lot for stuff that I done that didn't need to be punished. It was stuff that it wasn't that bad, but I severely punished myself, over stuff that happened, mainly because I thought everything was my fault. I thought everything that happened at home was my fault. I thought when we lost the match, it was my fault. A breakup was my fault. I blame myself for absolutely everything,
Hmm.
and stuff that was actually not always my fault. Like, so, I think that was probably the biggest challenge I've overcome, Carol, was telling myself that it actually wasn't my fault. And it goes back to the movie Good Will Hunting. If you've ever seen it, I think it's a great movie. Robin Williams and Matt Damon.
Thank you.
Uh, Matt and Robin Williams, it's a great example of a counselor. He stuck with him, and he stuck very patient, and he was a hard person to break down, as you know from the movie. But it just came to the point where he said to him, "It's not your fault," and he kept saying it to him, and he kept saying it to him, and he started crying, and I think that really hit home at me one day when I was blaming myself for everything. I kept saying to him, I said, "Robert, it's not your fault. It was never your fault. You were just an innocent child, and it wasn't my parents' fault either. It was nobody's fault. Like, it was. If you really want to talk about it, Carl, it was generations, the conflict and the wars and everything that passed down through generations that got passed on to this generation. And I was told subconsciously or through the spiritual world that I was going to be the one to stop the generational curse or the generational pain and grief passing down, and I will. So that's been probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. I I see this theme recurring with a lot of the right coach clients I work with around the world and whom it's my privilege to serve. And it's this idea that only the finest of blades is honed in the hottest of fires. What you've been through is your training camp, your baptism of fire, and what you've had to survive and endure actually becomes your reason for who you become and how you become who you become. And so, like you say, there might be a part of you looks at them lads with 5 or 6 All Ireland medals and says, yeah, that could be me. But there's a bigger part of you saying, I've absolutely no fucking regrets. I am who I am, and I am who I'm meant to be, you know, and owning that story and owning that journey, more power to you. More power to you. And that's a sign of authenticity as well. So a lot of people that don't have your courage or your vulnerability or your ability to be honest, they're not living an authentic life. And so for anyone that's maybe trapped in a job or a relationship or a situation that's not serving them, what would your advice be? Would you say that authenticity is a non-negotiable in life and that it's more important to be yourself and be who you are, rather than trying to be someone that's there to please others and look for admiration and look for this feeling of feeling seen and heard and loved, but never really quite getting it because you're not being true to yourself.
Yeah, like what happens quite a lot in relationships, Carl, is we go into relationships to get other people to meet our needs, like um, our needs for security and our needs for love, our needs for safety. And I
Or
suppose
in my
when,
case, our need for dinner.
yeah, to get fed, and it's a need to, but
She's an
ultimately,
amazing chef, by the way, I better say, in case she's watching.
yeah, that feeds your soul. Yeah, like, and ultimately, like, if you're dependent on someone else for dim needs, it's probably going to cause conflict if dim needs aren't met when your insecurities are triggered or you feel unsafe. So really, truly, the solution is to find the security and safety within yourself first, and then you will attract someone into your life that has a similar sense of security, a sense of safety, wherever you're, whatever level you're at, subconsciously or um, consciously, you're probably going to attract someone similar into your life that's going to reflect back to you a lot of stuff that you mightn't like. Um, so yeah, like for me, like I would have struggled, as I said, with trust an awful a lot of time in my life, Carl, and trust is a huge thing in relationships. Um, but like I'm also a believer in perseverance, and talking things through, and things can be worked out. You see, these days there's a lot of divorces, there's a lot of breakups. I'm definitely a believer in uh in working things out and getting professional help. Personally, I think people should get more professional help going into a relationship in the first place, and get some ever like I'm going into a relationship, or if any person's going into a relationship, they probably should have a bit of guidance I'm in a relationship at the moment. Well, I'm not sure where I'm at with the relationship, but it's challenging me definitely. But I'm seeking wisdom and guidance from the outside because I'm not actually quite sure how to deal with it. And I just think that's wise for me because I'm getting some good insight and some feedback, and the feedback is quite positive in regards to like just take a step back and be patient. Yeah, so it's definitely a challenge bringing someone else into your life because we're so used to being on our own, so used to being independent. But there's a lot of love to be received when two come together and become one. And then obviously procreation with children, like it's obviously it's we wouldn't be here otherwise, you know. So I think that's where I would be suggesting.
I've been saying it for years, but I don't know if anybody believes me, but 1 + 1 is actually 3
Okay.
because you've got, let's say, one, which is you or me, and then you've got another one, which is your the person you're in the relationship with. And when you come together, there's a third thing. There's you, there's them, and then there's the two of you together. So 1 + 1 = 3. And in procreation, you physically see that. You see man, woman, and child. But yeah, relationships are very much like mirrors, and people can only meet you in as far as they've met themselves. But I'm sure whoever it is, whether it's a man or a woman or whatever else, that they'll get the benefit of the work you've done on yourself, for sure. Yeah.
Thanks,
So
Carl.
one other question around the glitch in the matrix, right? Has there been anything that you've seen or anything that you've experienced that's physically defied the laws of physics, we might say? Anything like you spoke about Jesus and God before. Have you seen anything or has anything happened to you that has left you in no doubt that we're living in a kind of a program or a software program or a matrix? Is there a glitch in the Matrix story, Rob?
There is really, Carl. Yeah, from a very young age, I think 13 or 14, I kept seeing numbers on clocks, and it drove me berserk. Like I was seeing 13, 13, or 14, 14, 21, 21, and I was googling what does it mean, and like it was driving me absolutely insane. Like, and I suppose, truth be told, I actually still don't know what it means, but I just take it as I just take it as that the angels are around, or
You were meant
um
to notice.
yeah, just to tune in. I think it's to get my attention because I would have been quite a distracted, um, hyper child, and I think it was just to get me to tune in, maybe. But I see feathers quite often. I've seen a lot of signs that I've no doubt. Like, you know, I'm full faith in there's someone with me. There's a God there. Yeah, full faith in that. I consider myself very lucky, Carol, because I was probably chosen to go on a different journey. I was always different, a bit different than you, and I didn't, as I said, I didn't fit in many places. But yeah, that's for me were the signs, and yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah,
So I think that's a good place for us to leave it. Would you believe the bones of an hour and 15 minutes has just flown through there? And I guess all that remains is for me to thank you for your time this evening. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Where can people find you or connect with you? Are you available for people? And in what capacity are you taking are you taking bookings or are you looking for public speaking gigs? Or tell us how we can help.
yeah, Carl. It's interesting on the way up. I really said to myself, I really need to set up an Instagram account. I don't have any social media. I don't even like using WhatsApp. But I suppose, truth be told, I really need to evolve and set up an Instagram account. Um, and in regards to public speaking, I do want to do a lot more. Where to find me, I suppose, come to Pallasgreen, you'll easily ask for Robert O'Donnell. But yeah, but truth be told, I kind of need to get. It's been told to me, it's been said to me that I need to get Instagram and a few more things. And I suppose I will. The timing is coming. It's coming to a place where I do need that kind of stuff now. I really just wanted for as a platform to share my story. That's all I really want it for. I've no interest in getting involved in any other debates, or I really just want to stick to my story. Like, that's my main objective, and how that can help people, or people might learn from it. That's my own interest. Um, yeah, that's all I really want to do. So yeah, it's time for me to do that. So at the moment, I suppose, contact me, come to Pallasgreen, or ask for Robert O'Donnell. You'll find me easy enough.
One of the guys in the Menscape group is Brian Noonan. We kind of become friends over the last few years. Brian runs men's workshops and men's retreats. Us Mighty Men, for example. I think you'd make a great, I think you'd make a great guest speaker to come and be involved. Have you thought about doing any men's work?
Yeah, so like I'd love to, obviously. So I'd love to share my story, or share some bits with people, and maybe get them to sit around in groups and talk about it, and then listen to what they have to say. Because look, to be honest, Carl, like, everybody has wisdom within them. Everyone has the answers. I suppose it's the key is to get people to get the answers out of themselves. It's not to tell them what to do. It's to get the answers out of themselves. We're all culprits for telling people what to do and what's best for them, but ultimately, people know what's best. Like, and it's only to get them to tap into their intuition. And when you encourage people to do that, and you get the answers out of them, it gives you great confidence and belief that you can actually do this. That you can actually, yeah, you can find your own way. Because at times, look, I was very lost in my life, Carl, and I was in a dark tunnel. People say there's light at the end of the tunnel. I was in the tunnel, and in a tunnel, in a dark tunnel, you can't see anything, and you have to rely on your internal navigation, which is your intuition. You can't rely on your sight. There's nobody there to tell you which direction to go when you're at a crossroads. You have to tune in. You have to go tune into your intuition to find which road is the best for you. And I've taken many bad roads in my life because I didn't have a strong intuition at the time. But my intuition is stronger now, and my internal navigation is stronger, and I'm being guided in a better direction. And but I suppose I learned a lot from mistakes too. That's part of the journey. You have to, when you make mistakes, I found it very frustrating, and but learning to accept it, and forgiving yourself, and reflecting and processing what you did wrong, and how you can make a better choice next time. So yeah, I would have made a lot of choices on impulse, without thinking, because I was quite an anxious kind of hyper child, and I didn't have time to actually make a decision. I just wanted an answer quickly. I wanted it all now, and thankfully I have a bit more patience. And it's my life is it's easier to live now. I'm not as much on edge anymore. Thank God.
Beautiful. So if we're not in Pallasgreen, we'll have a look out for you on Instagram, and we'll look on the men's work circle, the men's retreats, and we'll look forward to your book. Thank you so much for bringing your honesty, your vulnerability, your wisdom, and your authenticity to the October Menscape podcast.
Thanks for the opportunity, Carl.
Much appreciated, Rob. God
Okay,
bless you, sir.
thank you.